Okay, so I've got the lighting coming together in a fairly basic way, and so I'll just show you the rendering there. And so it's probably a good point now to start setting up the materials a little bit more. And I will add just a few more lights so that I can see the materials a little bit more clearly. So very quickly, I'm just going to duplicate some more of these lights. And so I'm just copying lights basically. And then just also fix up my modelled object here so that it goes, got a problem there. So I've got to fix that a different way. So I need to draw a new arc there. Done. Okay. There we are. Sorry? Oh, I'm going to do that now. Okay, so the main thing I want to show you firstly is how to assign materials to different kinds of objects. So we've got here a wall over on the left there. So I've got a couple of walls actually. I've got, so that's my shaft. And so there's my wall. So walls and floors and ceilings, you assign materials the same way. When you select them, go to Edit Type, and then you'll see you can go to Edit to change the structure. Now, for this project, you'll probably want to have some exterior views that show the outside of your walls, and then some other views that show the inside of your walls. So that means you're going to have one material on the outside and another material on the inside for some of your walls. I know there are a few ways of doing this, but a good way for a lot of your walls is to add in a layer for the materials. So here you can see you've got exterior side at the top and interior side at the bottom. So if you've been wondering why it's so important to use that interior finished face interior and finished face exterior when you're drawing your walls, when you choose the location line, that's really what you're setting. You're letting Revit know which is the outside, which is the inside, so that when you come in here to put the materials on, it goes onto the right side. So make sure you notice that here it's got those things labelled. And so there my thickness is 540 as well, so make sure you notice that. So I'm going to leave that layer, that's my structure. And to add in a new material, this is going to be like my render on the inside. I'm going to go to Insert. So that's added in a new layer. Have you seen these before, your core boundaries? No? So those things are always there in floors and walls and ceilings. And they are what they say they are. They're just a boundary. They're not actually a layer. So notice how they're grey. I can't change them, and the thickness is always 0. So don't think of those things as layers, those core boundaries, they're just there to separate your structure from everything else. So I'm going to here use the down button at the bottom to move the layer I've just made all the way to the bottom, which means it'll be on the interior side. And so remember, this is going to be my render or my plaster on the inside of my wall. So do you know how thick that would be generally in real life? 80, well that's a pretty thick render. 10 mil, yeah, 10 mil is pretty good, yeah. It's about 13 if it's cement render, but we'll just say 10 mil, that's a good round number. And so just think about the people doing this work. They're going to be getting cement on a trowel and splashing it on the wall to do that interior finish. They're still the biggest, strongest tradesmen I've ever seen. They're incredible. They're lifting cement all day, every day. They're stronger than brickies. Yeah, it's interesting work. And So there we're putting that layer onto the inside, which will be 10 mil thick, on top of the 540 mil. And if you click on the preview button down here, then you should be able to see it, but it's very thin compared to our 540, so I've got to zoom in so that you can see that new layer, but it is there. Now I want my wall to remain 540 thick altogether, so I'm going to reduce that thickness there to 530. So the total is still 540. That's only a little thing, but it should help you a bit. So then the function. So the function is easy. Don't try and type in anything or invent your function. All you need to do is click on the down arrow and choose the one you think makes the most sense. And for you guys, for interiors projects, it's going to be finish 2 most of the time. Right, so if you're wondering what the difference is, finish 1 is basically for exterior finishes and finish 2 for interior finishes. And so other than your thermal air layer, that'll be the main one you use. Thermal air layers for cavities, essentially. So I've set the function, and then we've got the material, which is the main thing we're looking at. So now I can click there where it says by category. If you don't know what by category means, don't worry. You just need to select that field so you can get the browse button to come up, and then choose your material. So we'll start with a simple material, and I've been showing you can scroll through the list there and duplicate and do all of those things to make a material. But make sure you realise that you can get to the library just by clicking on this Show Hide Library Panel button, and that's probably the quickest way of making a new material from scratch. You've got the Home folder here, and if you select that, you've got 2 folders to choose from. Autodesk Materials, click there, and you can have a look through the different folders, and then AEC Materials. They're very similar libraries, those 2 folders. They just have slightly different materials. So you see here, go to miscellaneous. It's going from Z to A, so I'm going to click on the name field to put it A to Z. So I know there's a paint material there, and I could put that into my file, clicking on the little up arrow. But you might remember, I already have a paint material that I made earlier. So, I don't want to put another one in there. I want to copy this one and make a new one with this as a starting point. I'm going to right click and duplicate. So we'll call it Paint Red. Going to Appearance, then notice that it's got a name, Cool White, and more importantly there's a number here above the hand. That's really what you want to watch out for. When you see a number, it means this material or this appearance is being used by other materials. And I know one of them, paint. The original paint is using Cool White. So if I change Paint Red, it's going to change paint as well, because they're both using Cool White. So the easy way of getting around that is just to right click and duplicate. Now, if you've been using Replace, that's really good as well, and I'll come back to that to show you how to get to the appearance library in a minute. But I just want to show you how to make some adjustments here first. So we've got that name Cool White. If you really want to change the name, most people don't look at that. Once they've got it as a unique appearance, you won't even look at that name, but if you're fussy and you want to change it, it's in here under information. You can type in a new name if you really want to. So we can call that Red Paint. Okay, and then it'll change up the top. But the main thing there is the wall paint section, which will give me these options of colour and finish. Right, so notice we've only got 3 options there: colour, finish and application. You might have seen other properties there for other materials. So have you noticed what the difference is when you see only certain properties there in some cases? Well, I'll just show you what I mean. So here, if I go to this metal material, well, okay, it's a wall paint as well, so this one's different. So it's metal. But my paint red is a wall paint. So these are kind of hidden settings that that are buried deep in the program, where you can choose the template that is giving you those settings. And the easiest way to get a particular template is to duplicate a material that you know has one. So they're two of the more useful ones actually, wall paint and metal. But then another really useful one is wood. So notice how with the wood template you have an option also to give an image file, and you can give a colour and relief pattern, things like that. Whereas if I go back to paint, all I can do is change the colour. So I can't put an image into that one. Now, if you find that you've got a material and you really want to get all the other properties, what you do is you right-click on the appearance and duplicate as generic. Okay, and a generic material is kind of like the base material for everything. So that will give you all of the properties. There's one. So that's a generic material, and notice how it's got all these different fields. So at the end of the day, all the materials are using all of these settings, but with the templates, they essentially hide a lot of those settings, which is good because it means it's easy to make things like wall paint without having to worry about all those things you don't need. So I'll start with the colour. Okay, so I want it to be red, and yeah, so I can give my little spiel about colour theory, because it's good just to get you thinking about digital approaches to colour as opposed to more traditional ways of doing it. So without looking there, we'll cancel this. Well, you can see it here anyway. You might know. What are the primary colours? What are the two primary colours when you're working with light? There's no right or wrong answer because there are different ideas. So what are the primary colours? Yeah, red, yellow and blue. That's what you're traditionally taught. In art, I know I was taught the same thing when I was first taught to paint. That was all we were taught, was red, yellow and blue. But then I certainly struggled to make lots of colours using those primaries. Browns in particular are very difficult. And it's because red, yellow and blue are not actually primary colours. They're not the true primary colours anyway. Red is, but in a different model, and yellow is in another model. So the way it really works, or the reason that red, yellow and blue are still taught as primary colours, and the reason that they were thought of as the primary colours for centuries, is that they're very close to the real primary colours when you're working with pigment. So you'll see on printers, you probably all changed ink on printers, CMYK, that's right. They're the true primaries when you work with pigment. So that's subtracting colour. As you mix your colours together, you get closer to black, because the pigment absorbs more and more of the light spectrum. So red, yellow and blue, you can tell just visually, red is close to magenta, cyan is close to blue, and yellow is yellow. So it's an approximation of that colour model. But what makes it confusing is that working with light, going the other way, when you're adding light spectrum together, you might have seen that all of the colours together, what do they make when you're working with light? Yeah, yep, so what colour do they make? Yeah, when you mix them all together. Mix all the colours of a rainbow together, it's not black, it's going the other way. White, that's right. So all the colours make white. Yeah, you must have seen that. When you mix a rainbow together, or you mix red, green and blue together, it makes white when you work with light. So have you ever seen, when you have a prism, light, a single white beam of light being separated out into the colours? That's because that white beam of light contains all of those colours. Right, and so as you, and think about when you're looking at the sun, right, as you add more and more colours together and have a whole range of spectrum, it's going to be brighter, not darker. It's going to have more light, it's going to look closer to white than to black, because there's more light, not less. Okay, and so that's working with light, which is what we're working with on a monitor and with a projector, and generally with computer programs you tend to work with that colour model, adding light together. So here you can see red, green and blue is 242, 242, 255. So that's close to 100% for each of those values. 255 is the maximum. So I'll just make them that. So that's full white. If I go the other way, with red, green and blue at 0, oops, why isn't it doing it there? That's black. So like I said, it's a little bit confusing if you used to red, green and blue, because you've got two of those colours there from that red, yellow, blue model, but that's just coincidence, really. So red, green and blue are primaries working with light. Any idea why they're the primaries? You've got two of them in your head? Sorry? Yeah, kind of, yeah. Well, light, no, there's actually more. In the visible spectrum, though, that's right. So light has a very broad spectrum. You've got ultraviolet and infrared. But the spectrum we see is a narrow range of that. And the reason that we see red, green and blue is because our eyes have three receptors, or colours for those three, receptors for those three colours, which are red, green and blue. So it's purely because of our eyes that red, green and blue are the primaries, because our eyes do break colours down into those primary colours. So it's important to understand that, and once you think of it that way, you can make any colour using red, green and blue. And also with cyan, magenta, yellow, you'll have a better understanding of the printing process. So I might go further into that later, but that's just to get you started. And so you can see here with this colour palette, you can choose virtually any colour, and then you can fine-tune using the colour values down here. So say, for example, I might want a yellow. So you might click on this colour swatch. Well, let's go to this one here. And it's fairly bright yellow, but it's not quite a full yellow. And if you look here at the colour values, you can see why. It's because yellow is 100% green, 100% red when you're working with light. So there should be no blue in there. So if I make blue 0, now that's a full yellow. Okay, so again, try to get used to working with red, green and blue, but again, at first you can also use this colour palette and adjust the brightness value over there. Also, these colours here can be useful as a starting point. Alrighty, so I'm going to get a maybe a reddish colour to begin with, and so here you can see that's a very bright red because it's red 100%. So I'm going to reduce the saturation there, which is essentially going to bring in more of my other colours. So saturation is essentially the amount of grey in your colours. So starting with full red there, it's going to increase red and blue and green equally. And it's important that you can control colour. Also there we've got the finish. So you've got flat, eggshell and so on, which is your paint finish. And then the application as well. So that's very intuitive. And so I'm just going to click OK. And OK. OK. Right, now notice the walls changed there. Obviously the one that I had selected. So if I want these others to change, I need to go and do the same thing with them. But I don't need to make the material again. So I can go to Edit Type. And this time I might duplicate this one, because I don't want all of my 300mm walls to change. So I'm going to call this existing 300mm wall red. Go to edit the structure, a little bit faster this time, insert the interior, change that to finish 2, change the thickness to 10, and now when I go to browse, I've done all the work setting up my material, all I need to do is choose it from the list here. Go OK. Oh yes, I should have, yeah, good point, yes, I should have done that too, yeah, absolutely. There we go. So it works the same for floors. Now, so for these, we should just manage to get this done in time. I'm going to select that floor, edit type, and I'll duplicate this as well. So I'm going to call this concrete floor. edit for the structure, and I'm not going to worry too much about the extra layer here. I'm just going to change this thickness, make it a little bit thicker, and I'm going to change the material of that single structure layer I've got instead of adding in a new layer on top. So again, just like the wall, I can browse and find material that's close to what I want. So you've got this one, concrete cast in situ. So I'm going to right click, duplicate, and call it maybe concrete cast in place, which means basically the same thing, but I know I've made this one. So this time I'll go to appearance, and instead of duplicating, I'm going to right click there and go to replace. So remember, this is how you get into the appearance library. It's called the asset browser, but you go in here really to get appearance materials. So here, if you expand the appearance library folder and then go to concrete, you'll see a lot of pre-made concrete materials. So I might get this one here, precast smooth. Close this, and you can see there I've got a pretty good image of some concrete. Now, I'll just use that as is, just to show you what it's going to look like without even rendering. I'm just going to go to realistic. Because it's okay, but definitely could be improved. It's obviously tiling or repeating. So I'm going to go back and select that, edit type, edit the structure, browse, go to appearance, and just make a few changes. So I might turn the weathering off. I want this to be smooth concrete. So I'll set the sealant to just epoxy for now. And then I'm going to make most of the changes by clicking on the swatch here, where I'll get the setting for this image, basically. Now, it's a pretty good size actually. It's not far off what I want. Sometimes though you'll see it's much smaller, so you definitely need to check this for a lot of, in fact, virtually all the materials that you'll find use an image. You should go and get higher resolution the better, yep. And remember what Saul was saying about making things bigger, overscaling? That's a really good trick, and I would definitely be looking at doing that for most of these materials. Okay, so that's pretty close. We're going to make it bigger. So like I said, it's a good size. It's 2.5 metres, but I'm going to make it double that. I'm going to make it 5,000, which again is overscaling it, but that's okay. Just click on done, and then OK, 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 and there we are. Just so you can see it's even larger, but it gives a better appearance, and when we render, you'll see it will look more like concrete. Okay. So it's getting there, but when you increase the quality, the reflections and other things will look better. They're just coming into speckles at the moment. Well, it is pretty streamlined without you doing anything. You've got the quality here. Oh yeah, look, high is a minimum, and then best if you have time. Yeah, but at least high for your finished renders. Yeah, that's streamlining it as much as you can. Yeah. So the only other thing is your quality here, your output settings. If you want to make it higher resolution, set it to printer, and then choose the DPIs here. So, oh yeah, just a little bit more. Yeah. So okay, so I've got here the families I made, and then I'll just go to a different view so you can see them. Okay, so some families you'll get from the library. So this door, for example, is one that I just got from the library. So you need to use a bit of trial and error to work out how the materials are assigned. Right, so if I select that door, you can see in properties, it doesn't have any materials. Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. So I can't do it here though. And just to show you what I mean, if it was a column. So some families, and columns are a common one. Oops, sorry, just do that again. So I'm just going to get a structural column. And let's change it so that it's okay, so I'll just put a column in there because they're a family I know has a property for the material here in properties. Right, so notice how here you can see the material and I can change it there. So sometimes families are set up that way. That's one option. Now, this door isn't like that. To get to the material, we've got to go to edit type. Now, it's a bit of trial and error. It really comes down to the way the family was made by the person who made it. And everyone does them differently. So with this door though, you can notice here it's got material door and material frame. They're both set to concept, but if I click on that, I can change it to any material. So that's fairly easy, and I'm just going to choose a material from the list here. I'm not going to make a new one. Yep, that'll do. Okay, so that's set the door frame to that metal material that I've just chosen. And if I select the door itself, I'll select the door and then when I change the door panel or the actual door, that will be this one here, material door. So again, it's on concept. I'm just going to click browse there and change it to glass. There we are. So that's that family. This one here, I showed you last time how you can add your own parameters. So I know that I've set one up if I go to, oops, get out of there. So edit type. And we've got that set material parameter, so I can just change that as easily. So hopefully you remember that. But then this one here is one I used model in place to create. So that's the final thing I wanted to show you. To change it, I've got to go to edit in place and then select the part I want to change. So maybe I want this to be timber. So I'm going to go over here and you can see there is the material property and I can just click browse and find a material. So I'll start with one of my wood materials, duplicate it, wood, what's it called, wood column, and going to appearance, it's going to click on that swatch there, and I've shown you where you can get this folder in the last video, so I won't do that again. I'm just going to grab a new texture. Oh, sorry, that's not the one I wanted. That's more like it. Okay, so this one is very small, so that's 254, 10 inches basically. So I'll leave that size just so you can see it, but I'm going to change the rotation here. I'm going to make that 90, so we'll make it vertical. Get it done. Might make my stain colour a little bit darker. Okay, so it's changed the material, and well, it's actually repeating fairly well over that because the object isn't too big. But you can always go back if it's too small. And the quick way is if you go to the Manage tab and you can go straight to Materials there, so you don't have to keep selecting your objects. So I can go to Appearance, click on this, and then try a bigger size. Now notice that the seat has changed as well. and that's because it's joined. So if I change it to something else, this might go to something basic. So it's only a little thing, but I know it can be frustrating. The column's changing as well. So to change them independently, I've got to use unjoined geometry. Now, going into there, it can be different. Alright, so, and then just to finish up, maybe we'll give this one yet another material. Just to make it clear why you have to do this, because a lot of people think, why can't I just select the in-place family and give it a material? And the reason is that you usually have several solids in that family, and they can each have different materials. So you need to always go to edit and place first, then select the solid to give it a material. Okay, so I'm just going to choose the colour, and I want this to be shiny. Okay, so let's go and just finish that. So let's just get one last view there. And so just testing that on low, you can hopefully get an idea how the material's looking. Alright, so I'll definitely keep refining that. I'd make the concrete maybe a bit darker and maybe play around with a few of the other materials. But once you're happy with it, then you can of course increase the quality, and that will make it look much better. So I won't make you wait for that. But again, if you can get it looking reasonable using this render tool, if you can use the cloud, it will look much, much better. Well, actually, because we probably will only have today really to look at rendering, I've got to show you one last thing. Sorry. Yeah, because I'm just going to put something else in that you might not have seen. So you have Entourage. Now you can do much better with the people in Photoshop, but these can at least be placeholders. So if we get one, so here notice when I choose those families, RPC female, or you'll see RPC male's the same, then yep, you can choose the different people from the list. So you have several names set up in there. And let's get a couple of them. Yep, so it's just in the Entourage folder, if you missed that. Alright, so I always forget which one's sitting. Is it Cynthia? Yeah, Cynthia's the sitting one. And she's a bit low, so you've got to play around with that. They won't always be perfect, and sometimes they're really just going to be placeholders, and you can put a better one over the top in Photoshop. Yeah, just in the Entourage folder. So, yeah, Union's got a sarong, so she's not always right for this space. Which one do I have? Entourage.
Entourage.
Yeah. Yeah, they're in the default library too. Yeah. So, look, I'm just going to, before I do this, I'm also going to fix that concrete because I know I can make that look a lot better. Okay, so while that's rendering, I might just show you some images that some other students have done, just to give you an idea how you can use the 3D rendering for parts of your image. So you don't need to have everything perfect, and you can just chop parts of it in Photoshop. And so I'm looking for this one. Oh no, sorry, this is it. Okay, so here we are. So you can see here, this image uses some surfaces rendered in Photoshop, so rendered with Revit, combined with things done in Photoshop. So you can mix those things together and just use the 3D rendering for the parts you need. Yeah, the hand drawing. So really, same with this one. It was just the top and the bottom that were rendered with Revit. Everything else was done with Photoshop. And that would have taken no time to render because basically it was a big box floating in the air and a floor and not much else. So another one there, same technique. That can be really effective, particularly when you combine it with other media using your sketches and you know, your Photoshop work as well. Okay, so there we are. And so going back in here, you can fine tune the exposure. I'll make that darker, and maybe get some more lights in there. Play with the reflectivity. Play with the saturation, play with the white point, all those different things. Oh yeah, sure. Okay, so that should be plenty. Unless anyone's got any questions about materials? No? All good? Yep. Yep. Yeah, so when you bring up the rendering dialog box, if you've just done a rendering, you can go to show the rendering. Yeah. What do you mean, onto like Google Drive or something? Or oh no, once you bring something into your file, it's in your file. And oh yeah, and don't forget to use this image in Photoshop, which you'll need to do next week. You need to export it. So from here, you need to click Export, and then save it somewhere. So what format would you be using to save your files? Yeah, JPEGs are actually okay. TIFFs are good, TIFFs are the best, but TIFFs are bigger. So JPEGs are good because they're small and the quality is still okay, but TIFFs are probably the best if you've got the room. Save a TIFF. So very, very last thing I promise, in my folder now, there's my file, and can open that with Photoshop. So it's funny, things always look darker on the projector than on other screens as well, so it's good to check your images on different screens and see the difference. So, there we go. So notice how often you'll get the cutouts done automatically for you, so the windows there, you can put your own background in, because that's a transparency. Yeah, yeah. But if you're going to be doing dynamic edges, then you can cut the whole thing out and really play around with it. So you can bring the floor out and, you know, have the wall maybe set back or something, or the, you know, the edges of it fading into the edge, something like that.